A freezing stranger found shelter in her home. What happened next changed everything forever. The wind howled like a beast outside, rattling the windows of Sarah's modest little home. Snowflakes danced through the night sky, blanketing the world in a thick layer of white. She just finished another soul-draining shift at the diner, her face still stained with the remnants of the day's challenges, and yet her heart fluttered with warmth as she glanced at her sleeping children. They were safe, if only for that moment. But a jolt of worry squeezed her heart. She craved stability for them, a real home where laughter filled the air, not just survival. Then she saw him. A shadow leaning against her weathered wooden porch, shoulders hunched against the bitter cold. A stranger. Panic gripped her for a second, but something deeper, a flicker of compassion, urged her to step outside. The man's fingers were frostbitten, his face gaunt and weary, and in that moment, Sarah's instincts kicked in. She pushed open the door. "Hey! You need help." He looked up, eyes wide. "Please," he whispered, his breath visible in the freezing air. It was more than just a plea. It was a surrender. She couldn't leave him out here, not when it was this cold, not when she could see the pain etched in his features. She beckoned him inside, her heart pounding. "Jake," he said his name was. As she offered him a cup of hot cocoa, the steam rising between them felt like a lifeline thrown in a stormy sea. He began sharing fragments of his life, stories of a past that twisted her heart like a vine. A veteran, haunted by the battles of yesterday, he wore his scars like badges of honor and sorrow. At first, her children regarded him with uncertainty, their small faces scrunching in apprehension. But as weeks went by, something shifted. Jake became a fixture in their lives, not just a stranger living in their home, but a friend. Around the dinner table, laughter echoed where silence had once reigned. He regaled them with tales of adventure, and they saw him not just as lost but as someone who understood struggle. It was a bond forged in hope. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But change, like winter, had its own cruel way of creeping in. With a storm warning looming, Sarah got a call that shattered their fragile peace. A family crisis, threatening to uproot everything she fought for. Whispers spread through the town. "You know where she lives, right? That's the man she took in." Fear gripped her heart. The very community that had once been her safety now seemed ready to turn against her. She was torn. Could she trust Jake? This man who had breathed warmth into her children's lives but carried the weight of judgment on his shoulders. The tension weighed heavily as she grappled with her values. In that vulnerable moment, Jake's resilience shone brightly, challenging Sarah's beliefs about acceptance and family. As the world outside grew colder, the warmth of their home flickered. The question lingered, would Sarah stand firm against the tide of prejudice, or would she let fear dictate her choices? The time for a decision was nearing, dragging them all toward an uncertain fate. The chill in the air was tangible, creeping inside the walls of Sarah's home like a sly intruder. Night descended quickly, yet with it came a flicker of courage she hadn't felt in a long while. As she sat at the kitchen table across from Jake, sipping her cocoa, a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the drink. Yet, it battled against the encroaching fear that lingered in her mind. "They're talking about you, Jake," Sarah said cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't want to shatter the fragile peace they had created. "Some folks are worried. They think I don't know. They think you shouldn't be here." Jake's expression darkened. He set his cup down, the steam curling upwards like the tension in the room. "I didn't come here to cause trouble," he replied, his voice rough yet steady. "I just needed a place to find myself again." Find yourself. She felt a stab of anger, a mix of frustration and fear. You can't keep running from the past. It'll catch up to you. It always does. The weight of his gaze sent shivers down her spine. I'm not running, Sarah. I'm trying to stand on my own 2 feet again. Some days it's harder than others. A silence stretched between them, thick and charged. She thought of her children asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing just below their threshold. Jake had become a protector for them, his stories a balm to their quiet anxieties. But the whispers of the townspeople hovered like storm clouds, ready to burst. Suddenly, a knock on the door shattered their moment. Heart racing, Sarah's gut twisted with dread. Who would it be at this late hour? She exchanged a worried glance with Jake, and he nodded. I'll handle it. But uncertainty flooded her as he rose. This was her home, she should be the one to answer it. Struggling between fear and instinct, Sarah steeled herself and stood. No, let me. Please. It's my call. With shaking hands, she turned the doorknob and opened the door to reveal 2 figures outlined against the snow: police officers. Their uniforms contrasted sharply with the white landscape, and a chill ran through her as their expressions shifted from casual to serious. Good evening, ma'am, one officer said, the wind sharp in his voice. We're here about a report concerning a possible disturbance in the neighborhood. We'd like to ask a few questions. Disturbance? The word twisted her insides. No, there's nothing going on here. We have to follow up on information we received. The officer glanced over her shoulder, and Sarah felt exposed. Is there someone else in the house? Before she could respond, Jake stepped closer, his demeanor shifting from warmth to something intensely steadfast. I'm right here. What's this about? Just a few questions if you don't mind, the second officer replied, scanning Jake. Your presence in the community has raised some concerns. We just want to make sure everything is all right. She could see the tension in Jake's shoulders, the way his jaw clenched slightly. The instinct to protect her children surged through her. She glanced at the officers. You have to understand, he's not a threat. He's part of my family now. The words hung heavy in the frigid air, a declaration that sparked something raw and desperate in her heart. Were they really ready to face the storm brewing both inside and outside their walls? As the officers moved forward with their questions, the heaviness of her heart pushed her closer to a moment of truth, one that could shatter their fragile life or bind them together. Would they all find strength in unity, or would fear tear them apart? The storm wasn't just outside anymore, it was here, crashing through their lives. And just as Sarah felt the tipping point shift, a realization washed over her. She had to make a stand. How far would you go to protect someone you love, even if the world turned against you? Sarah wondered, caught between dwindling hope and the fear of losing it all. The night loomed before her, a long journey awaited, but where would it lead? The air felt thick. The police officers shifted nervously, exchanging glances. Sarah felt a rush of warmth just beneath her skin, igniting her protective instincts. She had never thought she'd have to defend Jake so fiercely, yet here they were, her heart pounding like a war drum. Is there an issue with him being here? She asked, her voice trembling but firm. The question hung there, daring them to answer. The first officer cleared his throat. It's not about him specifically, ma'am. It's about the concerns of others. We're just following up on reports of suspicious behavior. Jake stepped forward and looked the officer squarely in the eyes. Suspicious? Or misunderstood? Sarah's breath hitched. His words had the weight of conviction. She had never seen him so confident. Let us focus on the facts, the other officer interjected, trying to regain control. It's late and we need to ensure there's no danger here. Was Jake a danger? She couldn't comprehend that. The real danger lay in what she felt brewing in the community around them. Look, she said, the words escaping her before she even had time to think. Jake is not who you think he is. He is trying to build a life after everything. And we want to help, the first officer chimed in, his tone softening just slightly. But we need to know everything will be okay for the families in this neighborhood. Silence engulfed them. Sarah's mind raced. She had a choice to make, and it needed to happen fast. Would she let fear guide her decision or love? "I want to let you take him away," she blurted out, feeling the tremor in her voice. "You don't understand how hard he has worked to be here. He is family to us." Jake stiffened. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She interrupted, allowing her emotions to bubble to the surface. "This is my home, my children, and my life. Don't you dare speak to me as if I don't know what is at stake." The officers looked taken aback. Was her outburst enough? Could they hear the truth behind her words? "We're not here to suggest otherwise, ma'am," the second officer said, glancing at his partner. "We just want to reassure everyone involved." There it was, the weight of the world pressing down on Sarah, threatening to crush her. She could almost feel the icy fingers of doubt creeping in, the uncertainty of whether this ploy for control would shatter everything they built together. "Then let me help you understand." She turned toward Jake, her heart racing. "Talk to them. Open up. Let them see you for who you really are." Jake's brow furrowed, doubt flickering in his eyes. "Do you think that would help?" "Yes," she replied, her voice filled with urgency. "It's the only way we'll get through this. I know it." The firm resolve on her face belied the tumult that swirled within her. She desperately wanted him to understand that this moment was pivotal. Would he trust her enough to reveal himself, the pain, the struggles he faced? As their eyes locked, she could see him wrestle with his demons. What if they see something they don't like? "Then we will face it together," she promised, feeling the weight of commitment behind her words. Just as Jake opened his mouth, the officers stepped back, nodding. "All right, we'll give you a moment. But please know, this is about the safety of everyone involved." "I know," Sarah said, her voice steady. "And I'll do what it takes." As they waited in the tense silence, Sarah felt the need to prove their humanity surged within her. There was warmth blooming in her heart, hope and fear entwined like a dangerous dance. She knew change was necessary, and for that, sacrifices would have to be made. With the walls closing in, she whispered to Jake, "Whatever happens, remember we're in this together." Just then, a shout from the street broke through their moment. "Get out here. Someone's got to pay for what they did." The voice blared, echoing the growing storm outside, threatening to tear apart their fragile semblance of peace. Would their resolve be strong enough to confront this chaotic tide? Could they truly stand together against the storm brewing in their lives? Sarah's heart raced, knowing the night was far from over and that their ultimate battle was only just beginning. Sarah's heart dropped at the sound of chaos outside. Shouts drifted through the air like haunting echoes, each one a reminder of the anger bubbling in their community. She turned to the officers, searching their faces for answers, but they wore grim expressions. "Stay here," one of them commanded, his hand resting on his holster. They stepped outside, leaving Sarah and Jake in a tense silence thick with uncertainty. "What do we do?" Jake asked, the flicker of fear evident in his voice. She squeezed his hand, grounding herself in him in this moment. "We wait. We don't want to add fuel to the fire." But waiting was the hardest part. The shouting intensified, voices blending into a cacophony that rattled her nerves. Images of people marching down the street, torches brandished, filled her mind. Was this how it felt to be on the brink of destruction? "Maybe we should leave," Jake suggested, his voice breaking slightly. "I don't want to put you or the kids in danger." "No." She shook her head, resolve hardening within her. "This is our home. We belong here. If we run now, it only proves them right. We can't let fear drive us away. We have to stand our ground. Jake's eyes searched hers, and for the first time, she saw a glimmer of understanding. You're right. But I am just scared. Me too, she admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. But we have each other, and together, we're stronger. Moments crept by as they listened to the chaos unfold outside. Then, a new voice cut through the noise, unmistakably familiar. Let him go. He's not a threat. It was Kevin, the neighbor who had always showed kindness, who had looked out for them. Her heart swelled at the sound of his defiance. Another voice chimed in, he's one of them. We can't trust him. No. That's not true. Kevin shouted again. You don't know him. He's a good man who has been through hell. He deserves better than this. Tears prickled Sarah's eyes. She felt pride swelling for Kevin, who stood up for them despite the risks. But the reality was sinking in. It wouldn't just take one voice to drown out the others, not when the mob was fueled by fear and misunderstanding. We have to go out and support him, Sarah said suddenly, adrenaline rushing through her veins. We need to show everyone we're united. If they see us standing by Jake, they might reconsider. Jake's face paled. Are you sure that's wise? They might turn on you. She took a deep breath, stepping back for a moment to gather her courage. Staying quiet is not going to help us. We can't cower in fear anymore. We have to show that love and understanding can break down barriers. He hesitated, but she could see the flicker of determination start to glow in his eyes. Okay, he finally said, though doubt still lingered. Sarah took his hand firmly, and together they walked toward the door. The murmur of the crowd increased as they stepped into the night, the air heavy with anticipation. The scene before them was chaotic, angry faces shouting accusations and fear. At the center stood Kevin, flanked by others who had rallied beside him like a fortress. Sarah took a deep breath, her heart racing as she stepped forward. Please, everyone. She shouted, her voice ringing out. We're more than what we seem. Jake is family to us, and I swear he has no harmful intentions. We all deserve a chance to rewrite our stories. The crowd paused, some faces softening, others hardened by years of hurt. Jake held her hand tighter, gathering strength from her boldness. But would it be enough to break the wall that fear had built between them? As tension crackled in the air, the voice from the crowd shouted out again, you can't trust him. He's dangerous. The air felt electric as Sarah braced herself. She had thrown herself into this confrontation, and now it was time to face the truth that lay beneath the shouting. Would they choose to see Jake for who he truly was, or let fear dictate their perceptions? Could one decisive moment change everything, or would they all remain prisoners of their fears? As the world around them spun into chaos, Sarah's next words hung perilously in the balance, and the stakes had never been higher. The crowd shifted uneasily, an ocean of faces caught between anger and curiosity. Sarah could see the uncertainty written on some of them, while others screamed with conviction, refusing to bend. The chaos felt like a storm looming, and she was standing in the eye of it, acutely aware of the deep breaths she needed to take to stay grounded. Please, I understand your fears. Sarah continued, her voice trembling but resolute. But Jake has fought for his place in our community. He isn't what you think he is. A large man in the front of the crowd snarled back, you don't know what you're inviting into your home. Look at the destruction he could cause. Jake's grip on her hand tightened, and she felt his body tense beside her. The air grew thick with hostility, and she could see it in the eyes of the crowd, they were teetering on the brink. Let us stop seeing each other as enemies. Sarah pressed onward, desperate for connection. We're all scared. Scared of losing what we love, scared of each other. But what has that ever achieved? More murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, while others shook their heads in defiance. Sarah's heart raced. Each moment felt weighted with what was left unsaid, like a thick fog blurring their shared reality. Only love can banish fear, Kevin added, now stepping alongside her. His voice was steady, bringing a measure of calm to the turmoil. We have to face this together. We've fought too hard to let anger divide us. There was a flicker of hope as a woman in the back stepped forward. My son was hurt last year because he was different. I wanted to hate everyone who looked like Jake. She paused, her voice breaking. But I want to believe we can heal. Is that even possible? Sarah felt a wave of empathy wash over her. This woman was not just speaking for herself but for so many others who wore the burden of fear and hurt. It is possible. Sarah answered, her heart swelling with strength. But it starts with us choosing to listen, to understand. What if we invite Jake to share his story? What if we listen with open hearts instead of judgment? Jake looked at her, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Could he really share his past, the pain and struggles that shaped him? But the way Sarah stood beside him, unfaltering, ignited courage within him. He wanted to believe. Suddenly, the man from before shouted again, and what if he lies? What if he is playing you all? Then we'll know, she countered, her voice raising above the noise. But sitting here in hatred guarantees nothing but more pain. What is worth more, our assumptions or the chance to build a better tomorrow? Silence fell over the crowd like a blanket. The tension was palpable, a collective holding of breath where uncertainty clashed with hope. One by one, eyes began to search for connection instead of conflict, slowly considering the possibility that Sarah had raised. Jake stepped forward, squeezing Sarah's hand tightly. I'll share, he said, his voice shaky yet fierce. Because you deserve to know who I am, not what you fear. As he took a deep breath, Sarah felt her heart race for him. This was the moment, the turning point that could usher in healing or deepen the divide. She stood by him, and together, they faced the crowd, poised on the edge of uncharted territory. The question hung heavy in the air: would they silence their fears and listen, or would they retreat back into their assumptions, forever locked in battle? With the world holding its breath, Jake began to unveil his truth, and Sarah worried whether his revelations would bring unity or unravel everything they had fought for. Jake inhaled deeply, the air thick with anticipation. He began to speak, and his voice echoed with a fragile strength. I wasn't always the person you see today. My journey has been filled with pain and loss. I felt like a stranger, always looking in from the outside. The crowd barely moved, eyes fixed on him. He pressed on, his words spilling out like a dam breaking. I grew up in a world that didn't understand me. Every time I tried to be myself, I was met with scorn and rejection. It made me feel powerless, like I was fighting shadows that wore familiar faces. A ripple of murmurs danced through the crowd, and Sarah could see shifting expressions: confusion, curiosity, a hint of empathy. Jake's vulnerability sparked something deep within them, even if they didn't yet comprehend it. I made mistakes, he admitted, voice quivering under the weight of his admission. I once fought back in anger, thinking that would protect me. But it only pushed me further away. I thought of love as a fantasy unattainable for someone like me. He looked around, meeting the eyes of several people he knew had suffered too. I've learned that love isn't perfect. It's messy and complicated. It's also where healing begins. The large man scoffed, yet his expression softened ever so slightly. And what have you done to prove you're not a threat? I learned to channel my anger. I've spent years helping others like me find their footing. I became a mentor, a listener, a friend, Jake answered. But I know I can't change the past. I can only be here, now, and hope that you might give me a chance. A woman with tears streaming down her face suddenly stepped forward. My son is different too. He's been bullied. I thought making him hide was the answer, but it only made things worse. Her voice trembled. I don't want that for him anymore. I want him to live freely like everyone else. Each word she spoke was like a thread, weaving fragile connections in the frayed fabric of their community. People in the crowd began exchanging glances, realizing they were tied together by shared scars and experiences that often went unvoiced. "Maybe we need to rethink how we see each other," Sarah interjected, her heart racing. "We built walls to protect ourselves, but they only kept us isolated. What if we tore those walls down together?" As if a gust of wind had settled over them, new energy surged through the crowd. Jake noticed people beginning to nod, expressions softening, as if they were finally allowing themselves to feel something other than fear. "You're not the enemy, Jake," one voice finally said, breaking the silence. "We're all just trying to protect the ones we love." Jake looked over at Sarah, who smiled at him, pride shining in her eyes. This was the breakthrough they'd hoped for. The storm was settling, frontiers of tension yielding to the warmth of understanding, even just a spark of it. Yet just as hope began to blossom, the large man at the forefront crossed his arms tightly, skepticism etched into his face. "And how can we trust that you won't hurt us? That you won't turn into what we fear?" Jake paused, his heart pounding. This was where the real test lay. He could feel the weight of their trust hanging in the air, tantalizing and terrifying. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," he said, sincerity filling his voice. "But I promise to stand with you and fight against the real enemy's ignorance and hate. Will you give me that chance?" The crowd shifted again, uncertainty flickering through the throng. Sarah could see hope battling doubt, and she held her breath. Would they embrace the unknown, or retreat into their fears again? As the tension swirled, one small voice from the back called out, "Then let us learn together." "Will that be enough?" Sarah asked, feeling the world teeter on the edge of a profound shift. The crowd fell quiet once more, and Jake stood ready to meet the challenge, but behind him, shadows of fear still loomed. In that moment, every heart stood suspended, waiting to see if this act of vulnerability would unite them or unravel their fragile unity. Jake took another breath, prepared to face the uncertain paths ahead. Would this be a beginning, or would they spiral into doubt once again? Jake could feel the silence stretch, a taut string poised to snap at any moment. The uncertainty, the fear, the hope, it all collided in his chest like a storm. He searched the crowd, his eyes scanning familiar faces marred by worry and doubt. "Let me share something," he urged, a hint of desperation creeping into his tone. "In the beginning, I believed anger was my shield. I thought if I grilled my emotions, they would protect me. But it took years of bruising myself against that wall to realize my anger wasn't my armor, it was my prison." Around him, heads slowly tilted as the crowd leaned in, curiosity thawing the ice between them. He took a step forward, drawing them closer, inviting them into his truth. "The moment I broke that barrier, stepped out into vulnerability, look where it brought me here, with all of you." He gestured at the woman who had spoken earlier, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun. "Your son deserves better. We all do. We've spent so long fearing the world outside, we forgot to connect with the hearts beside us. You're not alone in this, I promise." The large man shifted uncomfortably, but his arms slowly uncrossed. "How do we know you won't just lead us into another fight?" he asked, voice gruff but less defensive. Jake nodded, thankful for the dialogue. "Trust takes time. I can't erase my past, but I can show you my present. I offer not just words but actions. Let us build something new together step by step." A murmur of agreement rustled through the crowd. People were leaning in now, encouraged by the growing warmth between them. As fear loosened its grip, Jake saw glimmers of understanding dancing in their eyes. This could be the foundation they needed to build bridges once more. A young woman, her courage radiating like a beacon, spoke next. "I've felt like a coward for so long, hiding from my own truth, but maybe it's time to embrace it. If we want change, we should be willing to face the hard stuff together." Her voice, though soft, rippled across the crowd, igniting sparks of bravery. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline course through him. Here they were, stepping onto uncertain ground, but perhaps, it was the beginning of a new journey. Together, he echoed, the word resonating like a battle cry. Let us rewrite our stories, take back our power. But just as the light began to break through the cracks, another voice called out, this one steeped in resentment. And what if it doesn't work? What if we fail? The crowd fell silent again, feeling the weight of that question settle like a lead blanket. The air hung thick with doubt, and Jake sensed moments like this could either shatter their fragile alliance or help them build resilience. He turned to face the man, holding his gaze firmly. What if we rise instead? Failure is part of the process, but it's our willingness to try that defines us. We owe it to ourselves to fight for each other even if that fight is scary. Slowly, a ripple of nods began to circulate through the assembly. The walls, once diligently built to protect against fear, started to crumble, revealing the hope lying just beneath. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across their gathering, Jake felt the weight lift even more. His heart raced with possibility. Would they take this leap of faith together? However, just as the crowd prepared to respond, an unexpected figure emerged from the back, a familiar face from days long gone, someone he thought he would never see again. Jake's stomach dropped, and memories came crashing back, both sharp and bittersweet. Jake, the figure called, voice breaking the charged silence. As the entire gathering turned to face the newcomer, Jake's heart trembled. What would this unexpected meeting mean for everything they had just begun to build? The figure stepped forward, and Jake felt time slow, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. It was Sarah. Her hair had changed shorter now, but those familiar, haunting eyes still bore the weight of shared history. A rush of emotions flooded him, anger, confusion, yearning. Sarah, he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. She was a ghost from his past, representing everything he thought he had moved beyond. Her presence was an electric shock in the fragile atmosphere. The crowd stood frozen, eyes darting between the two of them. Some whispered, trying to piece together the situation, while others gazed at Jake with concern, as if the fragile bond they had just begun to forge might splinter at any moment. Why now? Jake found himself asking, his words hanging heavy in the air. After everything you just show up? She visibly flinched at his question, her hands fidgeting anxiously at her sides. I needed to find you. I've heard what you've been saying. Her voice broke, a tremor of fear and determination mingling within it. I was afraid of how much I've missed. I thought if I walked away, it would hurt less. But it didn't. And now she swiped at a tear that escaped down her cheek, the vulnerability grounding the wild emotions swirling in the air. Now I see it's about healing, not just for you but for all of us. I want to be a part of this. Jake's chest tightened. Did she really want to help, or was this just her way of seeking forgiveness? The questions ricocheted through his mind. He still felt the sharp edge of betrayal, the pain of abandoned dreams. How could he welcome her back when their past had been scattered in ashes? The crowd's energy shifted, a mix of skepticism and concern now rotating back to Jake, awaiting his response. The man who had initially questioned the worth of Jake's fight stepped forward again. What does she want, Jake? Do you really trust her? After everything? Jake glanced toward Sarah, battling the conflicting feelings warring inside him. It's complicated, he started, his voice wavering. But she interrupted, already sensing his hesitation. I'm not asking for trust now. I'm asking for a chance. A chance to help, to support what you started here. Her eyes spoke volumes, raw and earnest. Just then, a breeze rustled through the crowd, reminding them of the evening chill settling in. Yet heat surged between Jake and Sarah, a mix of old wounds and new opportunities. I don't know if that's enough, Jake finally said, his heart aching. The warmth he had felt moments before seemed to be draining as doubt crept back in. Listen, Sarah pressed, stepping closer, daring to reach out her hand. I've changed. I get it now. I want to help those who feel the same emptiness I felt. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. Just let me show everyone." As she spoke, a shiver raced through Jake. This moment could be a turning point, one that might shatter their past or ignite a new beginning. But would he be strong enough to take that leap with her? The crowd held its breath, caught in the tension of the unknown. Relationships had to be built on trust, and he felt as though he was staring into the abyss, caught between wanting to leap and the fear of falling. "Jake." Sarah's voice was small but steady. He could almost hear the collective pulse of hope from the crowd. This was more than just a conversation, it was a crossroads, relationships teetering on a knife's edge. Would it really change anything? He murmured, his heart aching with doubt. Would Sarah's return to his life be a salve or a curse that might unravel the fragile fabric of what he had started to weave with this new community? As he held her gaze, the world seemed to pause, and his next move could change everything. Jake's heart raced. The crowd felt alive and yet so painfully restrained, like a tightrope stretched too thin. He could feel their collective unease, a mix of anticipation and disbelief. Watching Sarah stand there, he saw more than just the girl he once knew. He saw the potential for disaster or redemption. "Just give me a sign, please," he thought, glancing back at the faces in the crowd. His friends, those who had rallied around him to build something from the chaos of their lives, awaited his decision. They were counting on him to not just protect what they made together but to guide them forward. "Jake," Sarah's voice broke through his spiral of thoughts. "When I left I was lost. I was scared of everything, even of myself. I thought stepping away was the solution. But I've realized that running allows the darkness to grow. I can't stay away anymore." The way she spoke drew him in, her sincerity clashing with the memories that still stung. He remembered laughter shared, plans twisted by miscommunication, and trust undone by her absence. What had once felt like love now felt like a crumbling facade. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, each word heavy with meaning. "You don't just get to come back and expect everything to be fine." The crowd shifted slightly, sensing the weight of the moment. He saw a flicker of something in Sarah's eyes, a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I don't expect easy. I just believe that if we face this together, I can help heal what was broken." Each second stretched late into the twilight as Jake's uncertainty fought against the desire to grasp something familiar, something hopeful. Inner turmoil gnawed at him. He thought about their shared history, the way they had navigated the highs and lows of their earlier lives. The laughter that had bloomed between them felt tried and true, yet it now seemed overwhelmingly fragile. Jake understood all too well that sometimes hope meant risking the pain of falling back into a chasm he had fought so hard to escape. "Let us say I believe you," he hesitated, his voice steadying. "What do you bring to the table? What can you really contribute here?" A flicker of confidence ignited in her stance. "I've spent too long thinking only about myself. I want to share my skills, what I've learned about healing from past traumas. Maybe it's my turn to be part of the solution." "Yeah. What skills?" another voice from the crowd asked, betraying a hint of skepticism. "I've been volunteering with support groups," she said, desperation tinged with hope. "I've learned how to listen, how to guide people through the darkness." The energy shifted, the skepticism softening as murmurs spread through the small crowd. Jake felt the air breathe again, an opportunity crackling in the air like dry leaves before a fire. Could it be possible? Could they harness the past to create a stronger future? Could Sarah be the missing piece he never knew he needed? Just as he was about to answer, the crowd erupted into tension. A distant rumble broke the quiet, almost like the earth had shifted. "What was that?" someone exclaimed, and all heads turned almost instinctively toward the source, uncertainty gripping their hearts again. Silence stretched thin. The questions loomed between them, even as Jake glanced anxious at Sarah. "What does it mean?" he mouthed to her, both questioning their decision and the unknown force brimming outside their fragile haven. As the rumble faded, Jake felt adrenaline surge, a deeper question settling in the pit of his stomach. He stood at the edge of hope and uncertainty, wondering if the world outside their gathering would soon invade their fragile moment. Can we really face what's coming together? He thought, as the ground underfoot hinted at something looming just beyond their little bubble. The crowd's anxiety grew as another low sound echoed in the distance. Jake's heart beat faster. Something was approaching, and they needed to decide what to do next. The way forward was dark and fraught with unpredictability. But now, standing there with Sarah beside him, he couldn't ignore the urgency pushing him to act. Would they run back into shadows or stand firm against the approach of uncertainty? Are we ready for what lies beyond? Jake wondered, fear and courage tangled in the air between them as the unknown beckoned just off the horizon. Jake felt the tension crackle in the air as the rumble grew louder, reverberating through the earth beneath him. The crowd was on edge, and he could see worried faces shifting nervously. Sarah stood beside him, her grip steadying his racing heart. They were standing at the brink, teetering between fear and hope, but they couldn't afford to back down now. Whatever's out there, we'll face it together, Jake said, forcing steadiness into his voice. The determined look in Sarah's eyes fueled his resolve. They had just begun to heal not only their own wounds but also the rift in their community. Now wasn't the time to step back. The murmurs in the crowd died down as the earth's rumble transformed into something tangible. Lights flickered in the distance, the source visible only as shadows began to silhouette against the cold night. A realization sparked in Jake's mind: this was a metaphor for their community. Together, he shouted, turning towards the crowd. We've faced the storm of fear and misunderstanding. This is just another storm, but this time, we're not facing it alone. Sarah nodded, her voice rising to join his. We are stronger together. Each of us carries our own story, our own battles. If we want to rebuild our lives, we have to do it hand in hand. A ripple of courage spread through the crowd. Faces that once wore skepticism now held curiosity and defiance. One by one, people stepped forward, echoing their agreement. The noise outside grew louder, but their determination started to drown it out. As the shadows approached, Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. Come on. Let's show them that this is our community. Let us be the light that breaks through the darkness. With each step they took towards the approaching light, Jake looked at Sarah, feeling the bond between them deepen. Their journey through struggle had reshaped him, and now it was time to express that growth. This wasn't just about Jake anymore, it was about welcoming a new possibility. As they reached the forefront of the gathering, a voice rang out from the shadows ahead: Kevin, standing tall, filled with conviction. We have to open our hearts. This is a turning point for us. If we want our children to live without fear, we must demonstrate love and unity. No more whispering judgments, we've got to shout acceptance. The crowd erupted into cheers, voices overlapping in a powerful chorus of hope. We stand together. One figure in the back shouted, what if we fail? The doubt lingered, but it was met with a resounding then we will learn. From another voice. Jake took a deep breath, feeling inspiration surge through him. This is true bravery. Flaws and scars are what makes us human. We embrace them, because they create strength. Suddenly, lights illuminated the darkness, revealing a group of people with banners and signs streaming down from the hill. Peaceful protesters joined together in solidarity, calling for understanding, acceptance, and community. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she looked at Jake, unyielding and pure hope taking root in her heart. They had created a ripple, and now those ripples were transcending, flowing into the crowd. Look! She pointed. They're not here to tear us apart. They're here to elevate what we're building. Faces once clouded with doubt now beamed as the energy shifted from fear to exhilaration. They stepped closer, joining hands, creating a living chain of support that fought against the specter of uncertainty. Jake stood at the front, he could see the transformation liberate not just himself but everyone gathered. With Sarah at his side, he felt invincible. Let us show the world how we rise together. Even if we face storms ahead, we've already faced the hardest part, coming together. No one stands alone here. The crowd erupted into cheers, an explosion of unity that sent a shockwave through the air. Bright lights danced through the opalescent dusk, illuminating the faces of neighbors and friends who had transitioned from mere expressions of suspicion to genuine connection. In those crucial moments, each heartbeat melded with the rhythm of possibility. They were no longer bound by fear or prejudice, they had become a collective force for change. Surrounded by warmth, Caleb, the boy whose life they had fought to protect, held his mother's hand tightly. He looked at Jake and Sarah with wide, innocent eyes, recognizing their strength. For every heart that beats, justice will prevail. Came the chant from within the crowd, louder than any storm could ever be. Jake looked around and saw hope rising like the dawn. The darkness had begun to dissipate, and the waves of fear were washed away by the current of unity and resilience. They had proven that what began as found shelter amidst a blizzard had transformed into a beacon of love that could withstand any storm. As they stood together, hands clasped in solidarity, Jake realized the power they had ignited. They were finally ready to embrace the unknown, to build upon the connections they forged that night, committed to solidifying what love and community could achieve. With quiet confidence, Jake spoke again, "Together, we stand, and together, we thrive. No matter what comes next, we are family." The crowd erupted in joyous celebration, laughter and tears mingled in a beautiful tapestry of emotion weaving through the night. They were, at last, united. As the remnants of the storm faded into the background, a new dawn broke on the horizon, the promise of humanity and connection shining brighter than ever before. Together, they would reshape their world, one step at a time. Don't just be a part of this amazing journey. Subscribe immediately to our channel to catch every powerful story ahead. Leave a like now to fuel our momentum and help us reach more hearts. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings about this incredible transformation. And share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to feel the power of unity and love today. This is the moment to show your support, because only true fans understand how impactful this journey can be. Don't wait not even one more second to share.